historical perspective and someone who studies this, break it down for folks why many of us are right to be concerned.
Well, there's the record of what Trump has already done. He tried to overthrow the government. He staged a violent coup.
Talk about it, Ruth. Make it plain. Ruth is like, well, make it plain for the people, Ruth. Yes.
I mean, like a third of my book is on military coups, and I didn't think that it would be relevant to the United States, other than the United States having backed coups in Latin America in the Cold War. But this is somebody whose record speaks for itself. And, you know, in Vance, he's found somebody who said that he would do what Mike Pence wouldn't do, that he would have done whatever was possible. This is a right-wing extremist, Vance, who has said we need to, we need to have a different kind of government, and any means to that end are acceptable. I also want to shed another light on another point of connection with Project 2025, because one of the pillars of it is deregulation and privatization. And that's what the billionaires who are backing Vance and Trump want. It's not just that they want tax cuts, because the dream of authoritarianism is you take away the rights of the many, like reproductive rights and voting rights, and you give the cronies, the oligarchs, as they're known in other countries, unlimited liberty to do whatever they want and pay no price because you've removed all the regulations. And Peter Thiel, the fascistic billionaire who funded not just Vance's Senate campaign, but also his venture capital firm, he's famously in favor of privatization. So there are concrete agenda items that are part of Project 2025 and are also part of this choice for vice president.
Here's the thing, Ernest, I think it's one thing to hear that from Ruth. I think it's another thing to hear it directly from J.D. Vance. Here's some sound of J.D. Vance. This is back from September of 2021 on the Jack Murphy Live podcast show. Take a listen.
I think that what Trump should do, like if I was giving him one piece of advice, fire every single mid-level bureaucrat, every civil servant in the administrative state, replace them with our people. And then what do you do at the Department of Education? Well, you do what Viktor Orban has done in Hungary. You actually just, I think, go down American institutions and make it possible for conservatives to actually govern and succeed in these institutions in a way where they're currently cut out.
I mean, my goodness, Erin, it's like fascism bingo. Fire all the mid-level bureaucrats.
It's like
it's
go
Project
down the
2025.
List. These are all of the agencies right here. Project 2025 got them on a list, honey.
Listen, Alicia,
also the talk of our people, Erin, the shout out to Viktor Orban. Again, it might not land from Ruth, so just listen to what J.D. Vance had to say for himself before he was ever even chosen as the vice presidential pick.
Yeah, I mean, look, Alicia, Simone, I hear you. You got the receipts. I see Simone literally holding up the receipts. But the reality is this is GOP remix, right? I mean, like I said, I was on the ground in Milwaukee in the convention hall listening to, Republicans like J.D. Vance and former President Trump literally trying to recast what the Republican agenda is about, that they are the party of democracy, that the threat to democracy is really on the other side, that they don't know anything about Project 2025. There was no mention of the January 6th insurrection on that convention stage, even though there were certainly people in the audience wearing T-shirts, supporting the January 6th insurrection, or hostages, as former President Trump has called them. So, they don't care about what was said before. Obviously, J.D. Vance does not care about what he said before, even about his now boss. So, regardless of what people continue to pull up, they're going to say, don't know her, don't know anything about that. Where I am now is what you need to be listening to and paying attention to. But I think it is important to continue to point out previous statements, previous actions, and really the thing is that there is a record. There are receipts out there that can be pulled up each and every time they try to kind of remix and recast this message for a more general election audience that maybe wasn't paying attention before.
Meanwhile, J.D. Vance said this last night about America's involvement in foreign conflicts.
There's nothing radical about having a strong national security, that when we go to war, we punch and we punch hard, but being cautious and not trying to get America involved in every far-flung corner and conflict of the world. Sometimes, my friends, it just is none of our business, and we ought to stay out of it.
Ruth Ben-Ghiat is back with us, and joining us is former Democratic Congresswoman of California, Jane Harman. Congresswoman, I'm just going to come to you first because there's reporting out there that the Trump-Vance foreign policy view in his second term would be to take a back seat to Europe. And I'm just wondering, given that reporting, these comments from J.D. Vance, what we already know Donald Trump has said about Ukraine and what he and Vance believe, how is this shaping up for you? How are you seeing this?
Well, I wouldn't call it a back seat. I would call abdicating our responsibilities with Europe to defend against Russian aggression. If we give, or if they back off, however you want to phrase this, and let Putin not only take Ukraine, but march into Europe, what do you think Xi Jinping will do to Taiwan? J.D. Vance says he's not interested in Ukraine because he really wants to defend our interests against China. Well, I think that would send exactly the wrong signal. It would break our promises to allies. It would break our history with Europe. They're the largest trading bloc in the world. I mean, dumb and lame is not even adequate to describe what that policy is.
Ruth, I love the way the Congresswoman ended that, dumb and lame. It says so much about sort of the dumbing down of our international engagements by the Trump team, the Trump-Vance team now. I want to pull back the lens because I have such mad respect for your writing and your thinking and work in this space. How would you... or rather, what would you say to 1933 Germany today? I mean, knowing what we know, what would you say to the folks, the leadership, and even the United States in 1933? Because I think people kind of lose sight of the absolute role that history can play from an instructive level. So help frame this moment a little bit, because as we talked about before, we throw these terms around, fascism, and Trump wants to call every Democrat a communist and all this other crazy stuff. But help Americans understand what this framing really is from that perspective.
I'm so glad we're talking about this because I've been tracking with alarm this hashtag of peace that all the autocrats are using now. Orban went to see Putin, and they're tweeting peace. Went to see Xi Jinping, tweeting peace, and Trump is presenting himself as the man of peace. And everyone should realize that they're not going to be isolationist. Trump and Vance and the backers, they are enmeshed in another international order that is shaping up, and that's the autocratic order. And the role of the United States would be to get out of NATO, to hang back, to partly redeploy the military, I believe. I'm not saying the military would accept this at all, but the idea would be to use the military for domestic repression. Here we have the mass deportations of Project 2025. And Trump has said that he will allow Putin to do whatever he wants. And then he recently said that since Taiwan was stealing our semiconductor chip market, that he would not oppose, whatever Xi did and China did in Taiwan. So this is a hanging back to benefit autocrats. And so the idea of peace is something that nobody should believe. This is peace that benefits autocratic imperialism.
Well, Congresswoman Harman, to that end, I want you to take a listen. I'll read it for you. Some political reporting about that call between Trump and Zelensky. Trump has pledged to swiftly end the war in Ukraine if reelected in November, going so far as to state he would negotiate peace before he assumes office in January, and has disparagingly called Zelensky the greatest salesman of all time for his efforts to secure billions of dollars in military, economic, and humanitarian aid from Washington. But the title of that piece, Trump and Zelensky hold phone call, and Ukraine says it liked what it heard. Talk about the position this puts Zelensky and puts Ukraine in.
Well, Zelensky has to take that phone call. Let's understand, Trump hasn't won yet. We have 120 days to go. I'm hoping my party, the Democratic Party, pulls together around Biden-Harris, whom I support, or somebody else if the party decides for a different decision. But I think Trump and Vance, with this kind of rhetoric, could lose. There's a big middle in America that's responsible. There are Republican senators who are here in Aspen with me, Dan Sullivan and I'll remember who are much more responsible than the rhetoric we're hearing. J.D. Vance was a junior senator, spent 15 months in the United States Senate. And I think that this rhetoric is not only dangerous, but it is turning off Americans. So let me put that out there. On the phone call, I'm glad that they're talking, but I don't believe a word of it until, one, they're elected, and two, they try to implement it. A majority of the American public and a majority of the Congress support Ukraine. There are funds now for Ukraine. And let's understand, while we're talking about this, there are brave Ukrainians in trenches trying to take back the modest amount of land that Russia has cruelly acquired over over 2 years of fighting. And so I believe that the aid we're sending, plus the interest on the seized assets, which Europe has agreed to send, plus the long-range fires, which we are finally sending, plus permission to attack Russian targets in Crimea and Russia, will turn this around before the election. It's just crucial to make more progress and to prevent Russia from taking over Europe, as you just said, and China from its expansionist ideas, especially in Taiwan.